I'm James Constable, and you're listening to the James Constable Podcast on Get Radio.
It's a good start. I'm liking that. Here we are. My name is Rich Smith from Get Radio as well. We've also got Statman Teddy here as well, ready with all of the stats just in case you mess up on them, which is going to happen. It's going to happen. So a big thank you to the Queen's Head here in Ensham. That's where we're sat. That's where we are. This is the hustle and bustle in the background. Big thank you to them. Big thank you to Get Radio as well for putting this all together. And of course, a big thank you for James as well for being here and laying his career on the line for us to dissect, ask about, and kind of find out a little bit more detail. Before we dive into the kind of hot topic why everyone's kind of listening right now of being at Oxford United and your time there, your time prior to Oxford it kind of had a lot of highs and lows. You've gone from kind of League One football, you've gone down to blue square football and kind of everything in between. How was your career before Oxford United?
Like you say, a bit of a roller coaster. Obviously, playing non-league at 21, feeling maybe missed the boat. It's a funny age. 21, most guys are established first team players at that age. So thinking potentially missed the boat, and that was going to be that. So then obviously to get the opportunity to go to Walsall League One from Dr. Martin's Prem or whatever it was with Chippenham is a huge step anyway. So that was sort of life changing really, and you hear players talk about that bit of luck that they need. They've obviously got ability, but you need a bit of luck, and obviously for me that was my huge chunk of luck really to get that opportunity and give myself an opportunity to be a professional footballer, which is what I always wanted to do.
Yeah, and you mentioned your age as well, 21. Mm-hmm. You're sort of in that low. You had a backup plan even at that age, kind of realising that making a living in Blue Square, Dr. Martens, what have you, that it might not have taken off and been what you wanted it to be. So you actually had something kind of planned in the background.
Yeah, again, leaving sort of college at 19, 20 and obviously wanting to be a professional player, that sort of... I did have a sort of half opportunity. We went on trial at Rushden Diamonds and they offered us a contract there, me and another lad that used to play with us, and we just saw at the time, we were halfway through our college, so it was a big decision to turn it down, but we couldn't have carried on our college work. So obviously made the decision not to take that. But yeah, I realised non-league could be the rest of my career, which it was tough to sort of come to terms with, but I just assumed that was going to be that. So looked to go and get a job. I actually originally started in an underwear factory, and starting at sort of 6 a.m. till 2 p.m, finishing coaching, going training for Chippenham. And it was sort of during that period where I actually got dropped from the first team at Chippenham, which obviously ever since I joined them I'd played, and all of a sudden I was out the team because of I was getting up at 5 a.m. By the time I was going training at 7, 8 at night, I'd been up for hours and I'd been eating sort of on the go, food on the go, really just sort of took a hit. And I remember sort of having not a crisis meeting, but sat down with mum and dad, and they were like, look, what are you doing? Like, where are you? What do you want to do? Do you want to play football? Do you want to play what's your plan? And I said, look, obviously, since being a kid, I want to play professional football. That's my dream. So they were like, look, sack the job off, do something else. Like, obviously, I was living at home, so I didn't have massive bills or anything like that. So I think looking back, if it wasn't for them, I would have probably carried on doing what I was doing, carried on the non-league route. But they said, look, if that's your dream, that's your thing, that's what you want to do, you need to give it the best shot. So get rid of the job. And then we spent sort of 3 or 4 months putting together a football coaching company that we could run sort of locally around the areas we were playing in Chippenham. And yeah, it was pretty successful. We had a lot of kids coming through, and obviously we really enjoyed coaching and giving something back. So for me, it was a big turning point really in my career. If that hadn't come and I hadn't packed up work and things like that, maybe it might have been different.
And so you're sort of saying about life-changing moments. You made one there to kind of pursue football and go for it. Describe where you were kind of mentally when the Walsall gig came up, because that was a huge step.
Yeah. I even now, like, it's still, you can't talk about it without smiling. It's just one of those things you couldn't make up, you couldn't write. They I think they were sending scouts to watch the game when I was at Chippenham, and for whatever reason their game had been called off. So instead of the local sort of scout that lived in the area, or it ended up being Paul Merson, the assistant manager. I think Mark Kinsella maybe have come down that night, and that was it. It was like, that was for us in the change room. We obviously were aware they were coming, so for us it was like, this is a shop window. This is our opportunity. How many chances are you going to get to play in front of Paul Merson? And like I say, growing up, he was an inspiration. Like, played for England, obviously. At the time, sort of following Tottenham, he wasn't massive. I wasn't a huge fan because he was obviously at Arsenal, but still to sort of see someone like that at a game, watching us play, was just phenomenal. And yeah, just thought I did all right on the night. Looking back, I think I might have scored a couple or something, but
I love it. You know exactly what happened.
Summit took their fancy that night, and I got a call the next day from Chippenham's manager just saying, look, they want you to go out there for a week. And well, he didn't even get that far first time. He just said, look, they like you, they want to. And I just hung up. I was just like, this can't be real. Like, I thought someone was having me on, and obviously in the change room, that is the kind of thing you do get players pretending to be agents and all this sort of stuff, trying to pull your leg. So.
Well, you touched on it there, saying about you went into the game knowing Paul was there. How does that conversation happen? Do you all know in the dressing room? Is somebody go, I've spotted him? Or
no, obviously at that level, non-league, it's just very much like the person that sorts out the tickets, sorts out the kit, sorts out the drinks bottles. They every role. So obviously they had put tickets aside for Paul Merson, and then straight in, like, Paul Merson's coming like that. So something that, obviously, the higher you go at the levels, it's probably kept quiet. It's kept away from the players. For us, it was like within minutes of them asking for tickets, we knew, and it was a big deal. So, I think hung up, just didn't believe it was happening. Obviously, got a call back and said, look, it's for real. They want you to go. And even at the time, I don't think I really thought that. I thought they'd probably have hundreds of players go and trial, and I didn't really think too much of it, and just sort of, look, I'll go have a bit of experience, enjoy the week, and just see what comes of it. And like I say, the rest is history, really. I went up there for a week, and I thought I did all right. I come back and I was a bit sort of disappointed with aspects, and didn't sort of, like I say, hold too much hope, really. But yeah, they offered me a deal, and like I say, it was my first sort of real opportunity to do what I've always wanted to do, and that was to sign and be a professional footballer.
So we've got to ask, what's it like being managed by Paul Merson at that time? And you know, we all know, you know, it's been common knowledge. You know, Paul Merson himself has talked about it a lot. That you know, going through troubled times and issues that he's had. Mm-hmm. What's it like trying to be managed by him?
Still a surreal, unbelievable, great experience. Like to be managed by someone who's, like, say, played at the top level and brutally honest. Like say, he would tell us of his struggles, his issues he's had. I think maybe a little bit in his mind, he was trying to, like, in a way, sort of coach us through, like, what potentially we could go through in sort of years to come. So you couldn't help but sort of feel for him in a way, but also a huge amount of respect for, like, say, who he was, what he had done. And for me, it was like a dream come true to play with not only a sort of an ex-England, like, Premier League player, but a forward, someone that understood the role, like what my role would look like. And like I say, for me, it was just disappointing. It was so sort of short. It was only, I think I signed in November, and I think he left early in January, February. So such a small amount of time with him. But from conversations I had, he was very keen for me to sort of spend a year getting up to speed, getting where I needed to be. And then he had sort of hopes for me to go into sort of the first team and play more. So I was disappointed when he exited, and I wasn't too far behind him.
It's strange, like, just seeing you sort of speak about it now. Your eyes are still lighting up with the sort of the memories of that, and just kind of, you know, because you're still a young kid at this age. You know, you're 21 years age, and a legend of the game is now putting his arm around you and going, why don't you make that run? Or why don't you pull back here and find yourself a bit of... I'm not talking, you know, I'm putting words in his... And you're kind of going, bloody hell, this is amazing. This is, you know, this is someone I respected and revered. And like you said, it was shorter than you'd kind of wanted with him. And then you move from Walsall down to Kidderminster. I say down to Kidderminster, obviously a step down in league terms, but, you know, still accolades to be had at Kiddie.
Yeah, again, as soon as Paul left, it was a strange time because I had someone there who was protecting me. Like he was phenomenal. Like in the press, like he's not going to play. He needs to get up to speed. Like obviously I was scoring in the reserves, like scored quite a few in the reserves, but he was desperate to not put pressure on me and like say get me in there too early. So as soon as he left, it was Richard Money that took over. Who'd sort of had been away in Norway or Sweden, had come over and instantly just didn't click. He brought a couple of players over with him, so said, look, your chances are going to be limited. So having sort of taken the step from Chippenham, playing 40, 45 games a season to Warsaw, where I played probably a handful of games in sort of 6 months, 8 months, and it was just, I needed to go and play football. I was desperate to, it was nearly almost a year to the date since I joined. And then, Kidderminster came in and it was an opportunity to go and play. And I think I went over there for initially a month. From sort of the middle of November, I was going to be there till sort of Christmas time, and obviously maybe then go back to Warsaw. But absolutely loved the experience. Back playing week in, week out. Back that feeling of playing first team football, and again having that feeling of scoring goals. But it meant something not in a sort of youth league or a sort of reserve league. It was what I enjoyed, and I was instantly sort of desperate to sort of commit and stay there sort of a bit longer.
Yeah, and obviously the sort of pinnacle of that, scoring at Wembley. Every kid's dream is to score at Wembley. Not only did you score at Wembley, you scored the very first goal at the brand new Wembley. I'm sure we've watched the clips on YouTube of the commentator going, well, there's James Constable's name in the history books. Yeah. He's the first person to score at the new Wembley. Did you think about that when you scored? Were you just happy that you'd scored in a final? What's going through your head? Yeah,
again, just getting from when I joined, it was I think a couple of weeks after I joined was the first round, and again, having been at Warsaw and Chippenham weren't in that sort of competition, like Warsaw weren't, so it was like my first real taste of the trophy, and like I say, it was probably seen as the sort of baby brother to the FA Cup and all the sort of goes with that. So it was good. It was a good experience, but I never imagined that at the start of it, when we were beating Vauxhall Motors and teams like that we could go all the way and play in a final at Wembley. So the closer we got, it was great. And I think before the game, I'd already been sort of told that I was sort of top scorer in the competition, and which was again a massive. I got sort of a big plate to say that you were the top scorer, but to go to Wembley is. I'll say I never managed to go to the old Wembley, like see it, sort of feel it. So to go back as a player and sort of see it for the first time, brand new stadium, like the sort of English football, home of English football, to play there, but to score, like say, score two, and was phenomenal. And like say something, I've never ever watched the game back, never seen it back. I think because of obviously what went on in the second half and everything that went along with. Like say, I remember I still speak to lads now. Even at half time, we had decided that we wanted a win bonus rather than an appearance bonus, because we were like, look, if we're going to go, we want to win it. So if we might as well have more money for winning it than like have less money if we just appear. Like if anyone who appears, we'd said that. But I remember at half time we were talking about, I think it was a £1,000 bonus we got for winning, and we were already speaking about, which I think just makes you feel like, what will we do? We were talking about what were you going to do with it? Like the night out.
You're spending the lottery money.
Yeah,
aren't you?
we were stood literally at the sinks at half time in Wembley, like talking about what we're gonna spend this money on. And it's like, you look back now and you just think, like, how naive like were we to sort of do that. But then, like say, what happened in the second half happened, and we shed a few tears that afternoon on the pitch. There's many pictures of me just sobbing because again, I think probably just the feelings of being there, the excitement, and then obviously having to make that trek all the way up the steps to pick up a loser's medal was just a bit too much, really.
Yeah, no, that is it. I'm not surprised you haven't watched it back for that, because, like I said, it's every kid's dream to do that. You know, is it kind of like the butterflies in the stomach? Are you? I don't want to say yourself, but are you kind of in that mindset, looking around? Everything is shiny new. The seats are glistening. The pitch is probably like a carpet, the freshly laid. Yeah. And you're there going, oh my days. It's a huge stadium as well.
Yeah, we went, I think 2 days before to sort of acclimatise, look around, like drop our boots off. Obviously, that was probably more scary because it was just there was no one in there. Like you could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
So to walk around and see all that was unreal. But again, like I remember, like obviously family. There was bus loads of fans from Chippenham that obviously watched me when I was there, and they wanted to come, and like I say, loads of family and friends. My brothers were up in the sort of very, very sort of tiers at the top, like in the skies almost. And just everybody was there. Everybody that sort of had followed me through my younger career were there. So yeah, I felt sort of the pressure for that more than it being at Wembley. For me, like I say, it was just another game. Like we were there to try and win the game. The fact there was 53,000, I think it was. I think Kidderminster had sold 23 or something. Stevenage had sold their amount. But I think there was a lot of people that was just there because it was Wembley. It was like, oh, it's a new stadium. We're going to have a watch. So the atmosphere wasn't like, obviously, years down the line with Oxford. It was a lot more sort of subdued. There was people there that were just there to just watch a game. So it took away probably the little bits of pressure that you might have felt. So I think for me, it was just there to enjoy it. And obviously score was an unbelievable feeling. I remember celebrating right in front of the Stevenage fans. I've got a great picture in my study of them giving me all sorts of finger gestures. But again, at the time, going sort of 2-0 up, like I remember sort of sprinting off. We were just couldn't wait to get in the change room and get ourselves ready for the second half. But obviously, like I say, second 45 minutes wasn't meant to be.
Well, there were happier times at Wembley, and we will get to those in future episodes, I'm sure of that. But you move from Kidderminster up to Shrewsbury, and that was a funny time at Shrewsbury. Just sort of take us through that, because that was ultimately your platform to get to Oxford. Yeah.
But obviously Kidderminster, we got to Wembley. I think the club had made over £1 million in sort of TV money, and obviously the what went along with it. We had an open top bus tour through Kidderminster, which was slightly awkward. It was tipping down with rain, and there were still fans there to sort of celebrate, but we had nothing to celebrate. We had lost, and obviously pre-planned, so not a lot we could do with that. But yeah, obviously going forward, we went on and started the season really well, and then Shrewsbury came sort of knocking. And I remember at the time that the manager Mark Yates at Kidderminster said, look, if any of you have got chances to move on or you've got interest, let me know, because the club financially are in a sort of bit of a hole at the moment. They need finances. So obviously I had an opportunity, and they were keen to take me. So I remember going and saying to him, look, this was like deadline day. It was the 31st of January, and I'd had a call to say, look, they want you to come up. So I said to him, look, they're keen to make it happen. So he's like, okay, like go sit in the change room. So we'd finished training. It was sort of 2:00 in the afternoon. I had no clue what was sort of to pan out. So we just sat there and got to sort of 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I was like, should we go and get some tea, or like, yeah, go and get some dinner? Like nothing sorted. So again, we were just sat there. By this time, I was joined by the goalie at the time, Scott Bevan, and he had sort of come into the deal, and there was sort of both of us being sort of tried to arrange a move for both of us to go to Shrewsbury. So we just ended up spending the rest of the evening there till I think it was probably 10:15 in the evening. And obviously we knew the window shut at midnight then. It wasn't 11. So we were just waiting for the call basically to say it was off, and then it was on. Then they said, look, you might as well go home. And then it was back on again. So literally about 10:30, we set off to go to Shrewsbury. It was like they'd okayed it. They'd agreed the fees and what have you. So we just drove up there, drove to Shrewsbury, didn't know what to expect. We hadn't spoke to anyone at the club. It was, again, surreal. Like we just literally, we could have got there and it not work out, and we're back with Kidderminster on the sort of Tuesday or whatever, or we sign, and overnight we're at a different club. So it sort of came out of nowhere. But yeah, we went up there, spoke to the chairman, the manager, got it all signed. I think 11:45 it went through, and that was it. The next day we were travelling from Kidderminster. I was picking up Scotty and we were shooting up to Shrewsbury, and that was, like I say, it had all been sort of done and dusted.
Well, we're definitely we'll go into, I think, in greater detail, sort of transfer days in future episodes, because there's 1,000,001 questions I want to ask about that. There really is, but we must sort of press on. But so your time at Shrewsbury, you've got the move you wanted. It's a bigger club, playing league football. It's where you want it to be, and then, dare I say, the career hits another stumbling block with players coming in to Shrewsbury, really, that meant that you were slightly further down the pecking order.
Yeah, I've spoken about it's obviously you get the luck to get that chance, but also luck goes the other way. Like say for me, it was managers being sacked. Obviously, I came in at Walsall, Paul Merson got sacked. I came in at Shrewsbury, Gary Peters, the manager at the time. 2 months in, he got sacked. So instantly, those people that have brought you there and have a sort of genuine belief that you can play for that club, you can do well. You're straight back into someone that I think we had a sort of caretaker spell with a manager, and then Paul Simpson came in, and obviously I remember speaking to him prior to breaking up for the season, and they just said, look, go away, get yourself fit. I say, even looking back now, I think that was probably the fittest I'd ever got myself. I basically didn't have any holiday that summer. I did runs. I ended up sort of getting shin splints because I'd been out, like literally just road running, getting myself into the best condition because, like I say, I'd had that knockback at Warsaw, and I just didn't want it to happen again. And obviously, I walked back in through the door, and you could just tell something was up. Like the manager sort of greeted everyone, and you wouldn't get any eye contact, and like I say, you get that sinking feeling that something's coming, and it obviously finished his welcome everybody, and then just like, can James go have a quick chat in the office, and I just thought, right.
Takes me back to school.
Yeah.
It takes me back to school.
You just don't know what's happening. You don't know if they're offering you a deal or if they're going to release you. You literally just had no clue. We didn't know him, but hugely. Like say, we'd only had a couple of months towards the back end of the season. Obviously, he hadn't had a huge chance to see what I could do. Obviously, I scored a couple against MK Dons. We were 3-1 down and scored 2. And Paul Merson, Paul Lintz was the MK Dons manager, and he had gone absolutely ballistic at them and things like that. So during my time there, I'd done all right. I scored, like say, at Brentford, and I'd scored goals at that level. So I didn't sort of think too much of it. I was thinking, well, he might want to chat, he might want to see where I'm at. But obviously came in and they had mentioned there's a few new signings at the time. He didn't say sort of names, but as soon as he said new signings, I was thinking, oh, here we go. So again, they just said, look, your chances are going to be limited. This isn't like you've got to leave, but the chances are if you're going to be third, fourth, fifth choice striker at the club is, for me, it was never going to be about just sitting. I've never been one of those that just sit and collect your money. It's not about that. For me, I wanted to play, and he said, like, obviously Oxford were a club on the radar that would be interested in taking you. So for me, I knew plenty about them, and so it was just a case of really going to meet them and see what the opportunity was going to be like.
Now, so you were kind of brought in to help Shrewsbury push for the playoffs. That kind of didn't materialise. People coming in like Grant Holt, big Premier League striker, Norwich City, banging in goals, and up there, who taken your place, as it were, and did all right for it.
Yeah.
But like you said, Oxford were interested. Just kind of go through how you were feeling at that point, because you've had real ups and downs. Mm-hmm. You've taken moves, dare I say, step backwards in leagues to play regular football, which you've alluded to. A lot of players would be quite happy to be third, fourth striker at Shrewsbury and kind of go, I'm on a decent wage, playing league football, might get a call up, might not. Yeah. And you kind of gone in down, you sat there in Oxford again, and what's going through your mind? Are you going, right, this is the last round? Because you're 24 now?
Yeah, 24. Yeah,
So I mean, again, it's not old in any way, shape, or form. However, in a football career that could potentially last until early 30s, there's a shelf life. What's going through your heads when you're kind of going to Oxford? Almost like that journey down to Oxford.
I remember just obviously before going down there, it's just like, it's happening again. Like it was that sort of sinking feeling of. I think a lot is made of the Football League, but it is like a strange sort of like pull. You want to play at that level. Like say, it was always a difficult decision to leave any, like say, Football League club. But it was once I'd gone and sort of met Darren and sort of had conversations. He was sort of keen to remind me that obviously my time at Kidderminster, I'd been in the England C setup, and there was lots of benefits to being in non-league. Like obviously the chances of getting back into that were good, and obviously that's a huge sort of shop window to be in. And I say, just really, I think I come away from the meeting with Darren just feeling actually I'm ready for another challenge. I came in a little bit sort of like you say, the lad at school that's in trouble, to then actually coming out of that meeting thinking, you know what, like I'll go and show him. Like I always had belief in my ability anyway, but I think with Darren, I just felt like I could go and sort of show that, and ultimately the plan was to get Oxford back into the Football League. So it was going to be a case of, if I do it with them, then sort of I'll show these guys that said I wasn't good enough or that I couldn't do it, that we can, and we can kick on and be part of that for Oxford.
Yeah, and you said, taking words out of your mouth that you've said to us before, you've said that it's what you needed and what you wanted as well. It's come along at the right sort of time. And you mentioned as well that the meeting was just, it's just in a pub, just a conversation like we're having literally now, just across the table. Yeah. Were you made to feel? You mentioned the bigger picture. Was that the draw to kind of go, okay, well, this is a big team that are not in league football. I've got a chance to make a name for myself, or a chance to boost my career a little bit more. But is it also just about a manager having belief in your abilities? Because you've had that with Paul Merson of all people, going, yep, I like the look of him. Playing League Two football, going back down into it, and what have you. It's a silly question. Is that important? But does it give you that lift, and does it give that impetus to push on and ultimately become the legend of Oxford United that you are? But right from that first conversation in a pub. Yeah.
Well, like I say, the knockbacks, they are difficult. They are sort of hard to sort of take, especially when you've been there and the doubt sort of creeps in. But I think with Darren, that belief he gave me in like I say, 10, 15, 20-minute conversation gave me the sort of belief that I could go there. I knew myself that I could do that, but when it's coming from a manager, and obviously I had a few sort of interests from other clubs, but I don't think I would have dropped down for many clubs other than Oxford. To drop down was going to be tough, but if you looked at the sort of teams that were in that league, there was no bigger teams than Oxford. So for me, it didn't. Although it was a step down, it didn't seem like it. Like I say, from obviously knowing about the club, living so close to it anyway, and following it like the games as up when I was younger. So, like I say, I didn't really see it as a step down. But again, I was probably at that sort of crossroads again, where I was thinking, well, like you say, I'm not a 21-year-old anymore. I'm not like a kid. I'm sort of experienced at that level. People had known me, and people would sort of look at his career and think, like, I always remember thinking, well, he's just going like that. There must be something with him. Why is he moving around? So I thought this was not a be all end all, but this was going to be a huge opportunity for me to say, look, you know what? This is what I can do. This is the level I'm at. This is what I'll do to defences in that league. And it was over to me then to really sort of go and back it up with my ability, not just to what I've sort of said before, is go and show it.
Did you feel that your career up to that point had been lucky or unlucky? Did you feel you'd got the breaks you deserved, or did you feel that you'd been given a bad hand in certain things? Because we've been speaking and we've seen the ups and downs of everything. Yeah. How, are you feeling a bit bitter that you could, that's unfair? Or are you feeling like, okay, no, this is another chance that I've been given. Yeah. Let's see what happens.
At the time, I think it is, you do look at it as like you've been dealt a rough hand. Like, although you're doing every young kid, every player that's ever kicked the ball would love to do, which is, it's only when you get older you look back and think, actually, like, I was pretty fortunate. Like, I did a job for 15, 16 years that every kid would love to do, but probably people don't see on the other side of it. There's a lots of sort of stresses and strains of being at that level and playing in those type of games. But I remember just thinking to myself, like, I need to kick on, and like I say, I felt at the time I'd been dealt a bit of a rough hand, and obviously subsequently I sort of realised that maybe going back to Shrewsbury wasn't going to be an option, and they didn't sort of speak too favourably about me at sort of that season. But I just enjoyed being around, say, players that were keen to kick. Like, we had gone from, obviously Shrewsbury were just a sort of mid-table team at that level, whereas Oxford, I came in and I could tell very quickly that we were tipped to be there or thereabouts, and obviously for the fans and people that know the club were obviously desperate to get themselves back to the Football League where they'd been for so many years before that.
Well, the interesting thing that gets me there is you talk about the personal side of it, the bit that we don't see. And I think especially for us now watching football, where we've got our fantasy football and things, where players are literally just the amount of points they get you rather than the person behind it. Coming into a dressing room at Oxford as well, you've had the difficult stuff in your own career that people are not necessarily seeing, but you've got history with a club like Oxford as well, having played against them with Kidderminster. And for those who wouldn't know, the year before you got sent off and there was 3-match ban and things. And I know something in the press was made of you burying the hatchet with James Clark, who was the Oxford player involved. But is there a bit of that coming in thinking, okay, last time I was here, I was in the opposite dressing room. I was effing and jeffing it, so-and-so at the back. Like, how does that go through your mind?
Yeah, it is that. And like I say, it's always strange when, like say, you walk in the change room and to be fair, looking back, it was quite nice because it was like a bit of a joke. Like lads would be like, create like a little ring around you and like fight. But it just breaks the ice. And like I say, for me, it was great. I'd gone in there and I'd, like I say, played against them for Kidderminster, so I knew the qualities they had and some of the players they had in the change room, Adam Murray and Billy Turley and Barry Quinn. And you just go through the team and there was just quality way beyond conference level. They should not have been at that level. And for me, it made it easier walking into a team like that. It was, I say, nothing against Kidderminster, but it felt a lot more professional. Like say, off the pitch, on the pitch, like the structure of how they did it, obviously the stadium, everything about it just didn't feel like a non-league club. It didn't feel like I was sort of stepping down from Football League and I was sort of in the sort of echelons of football. It still felt like I was part of a Football League club. So it made it easier, but I think, like I say, sometimes when you have that, it makes it a little bit easier and obviously catching up with Clarkey and sort of having a laugh about that sort of settled me in a little bit and made me feel a little bit more comfortable quicker than probably I would have felt.
Well, we spoke, about how you were feeling coming into Oxford United, yet another sort of pinnacle moment in your career, wanting to make an impact, wanting to, do well at a big club that was in a league that it probably shouldn't have been in. Maybe didn't have the instant impact that you were hoping. Statman Ted's got the official, just in case any of this is bent in any way, shape or form, the official start to the James Constable Oxford United career. And we're not going to talk about the friendly game where you did score in your debut against Oxford City because that was a friendly. We're talking proper football here. It didn't have the best start.
Yeah, so first game, Friday night, away in Barrow. You've just come down from Football League, big loan signing, 3-0 loss. And if that wasn't bad enough, then home debut, a few days later, 1-0 loss to Weymouth. And it's striker to put in the goals, to have not scored a goal at all and to be a big promotion-chasing team. Is there a bit of a moment where you go, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
Yeah, I think we definitely felt that pressure. I think as well, like that season, we sort of said Jamie Guy came in, and for me it was a little bit of, I could sort of not go under the radar, but I didn't feel as much pressure. I think a lot of that first sort of pre-season games, he was the guy that everyone wanted to speak to. It was like, I think people knew a bit about me and my career, so it wasn't so much of a big thing. They wanted to speak to him, and I think, I just sort of went under the radar a little bit, give me a bit of a chance to sort of find my feet and get going. But like you say, the first couple of games were tough. Like I say, we had a couple of sort of poor defeats, and I remember sort of Darren sort of looking around and was, especially after the Barrow game, we'd obviously gone down to 10 men, but he wouldn't have swapped, and we wouldn't have swapped any of our players for theirs. It was like we had more than enough in that change room to get a result, but it just wasn't clicking, and we did feel a bit of pressure for the first, say, 3 or 4 weeks until we got the results that we knew the squad of players we had could get. But it was just a case of just working hard until we managed to get those results and kickstart that season.
You didn't have to wait long. Third game of the season, make your mark and make it in a big way. Let's see if James remembers a few of the stats from that game.
Yeah, I remember we won 6-3, I think it was.
Yeah, 6-3, spot on.
I nearly said Ebbsfleet the other day, but I think it was Eastbourne.
It was Eastbourne Borough,
Yeah.
yes, indeed.
And I think I scored 2.
And an assist.
And an assist, yeah. Which is not like me, because I don't tend to get too loose.
Was that an accident, was
I'm normally
it?
that close that I just put
Is
them in,
that
but
one of those shots which is taking a bounce on someone
it could have
else?
been. It could have someone nice in the office put that down as an assist, but I think that was for us then the real sign of we'd finally delivered what we knew we could, what the ability we had in the change room that could produce. But I think for us then, maybe we got carried away, maybe we sort of got ahead of ourselves thinking, we've sort of turned that corner, and we had played well, but obviously the next sort of couple of games after that, we were brought sort of crashing back down really.
Well, another 3 games, no goals, no wins, and
I don't remember those.
But it's that stop-start nature that, especially, you said a little bit about not feeling the pressure, being a loan signing and being a little bit under the radar because people like Jamie Guy. But to have that start and then to go back, a part of you must have been thinking, you said already about the up and down nature of the teams you'd been in. Is this just the reality of football, just up and down, up and down?
Yeah. I think especially at any home game, I'd been part of that. When you come as an away team, it's like, this is nice. I'll have a bit of this. Like, pitch is pristine, massive change rooms. Everybody that came to our place was like, roll the sleeves up. We want to be part of this. And I remember games where players would say they're like big time and they get this, they get that. We had all the sort of supplement drinks, and like teams would turn up with just water bottles, and the club would given us every opportunity to sort of kick on. And I think that took a while for people to sort of realise what that was like and what that actually meant. And we said that we used to have to do urine samples before training, before games, like all these. This is nothing to do with the FA or the club. This was to do with sort of governing bodies. This was just a club wanting to know how the lads have been, have they drank water, we'd have apps where we'd have to say if we were tired or whether we were fit to train. And it was probably getting the players that had come from lower leagues up to that level, and the lads that had come down from higher levels to buy into that and understand why they were doing it and what it meant really for us. And they were giving us the best platform to try and win games.
Well, the person implementing that is probably implementing something very similar at Aston Villa now. Yeah,
so you mentioned this a little bit briefly to me off mic, and about this guy, Jordan, and how he came in and looking at his career. So he went on from Oxford, went to Swindon, he spent time at Leicester, and then ended up in Liverpool Academy, working with Steven Gerrard, takes him to Rangers, takes him to Villa. Like, you can see that as you say, you clearly were operating with that goal of being at pro standard. Yeah. For you personally, coming down and saying about having to take that step down, that must have been a bit of a kickstart. Being like, I'm still in the big time. I'm still there.
Yeah, well, I remember I didn't have that at Warsaw, certainly didn't have it at Kidderminster, didn't have it at Shrewsbury. These were things that were ahead of what people were doing. No one had apps to say how many hours sleep you'd had, or say having to wee in a test tube and pass it to him to tip a little bit in a dish and test how much water you've got in your system or whether you've got any alcohol in your system. And watching DVDs on teams that we were going to play that they might have been videoed on a mobile phone or whatever, but you could get the crux of what they were like, how they set up. All these little things that were coming in were just, ahead of where we were. And I'd been told all this prior to joining, but again, managers will say things sometimes to get you to sort of come, and then you get there and it's not. So to sort of find that all the things that they had said and all the things they had promised were there was, for me, a big deal in showing where they wanted to go and what they believed they could achieve.
Does everyone take it seriously, though, at that level?
No. I say, there was many occasions where lads would all have the same score, or there'd be... You could see that it was just pure water. There was just no urine in there at all. The lads had just tried to dip it under the tap quickly to top it up, but gone too far and watered it down. And the scores wouldn't always read. And I think they were sort of... Well, I was speaking to Matt Green yesterday, and we were just talking back over things that we used to do. And at the time, it was we laugh now, but then it was I remember lads sort of necking a litre bottle of water just like in the change room before having to go and do this test, and it was like 0 urine. It was just all water because it was just they were so desperate to sort of hit this target and not be over or under, and it was just fun times. But yeah, we could see what they were trying to achieve and what they sort of had really outlaid on what all that stuff costs money, like all the kit, all the like say supplements, and someone doing all the DVDs and clipping it. It was phenomenal sort of effort they had gone into, and like say Jordan was a prime example. He was out setting up the warm-ups, coming back in, doing the tests, doing all the scores, getting all the information from that we didn't have. I think we had Neil, like the physio that moved on to Derby, and in the end, but like, other than that, it was just Jordan. There was no, like now, every club's got like 10 staff that do analysis or supplements or massages. There was literally one guy that just did everything. So, and not to forget Lindsay, he did all the massages and strappings, but it was a small squad of people that I think as you got to know him more, I think it sort of brought everyone closer together, and like I say, results started to improve sort of gradually over the time that I had been there, and like I say, we felt that we could really go on and do something.
There's this definite, there's a clear, with the background set up, with the infrastructure that was there, we've mentioned before that Oxford was a club that it felt like it didn't, it felt like it shouldn't have been in the blue square, but it was. There was a belief that it should have been, in league football. We've mentioned as well. You mentioned as well that the away attendances for Oxford were always phenomenal.
Yeah.
Going to he said like going to places like Forest Green where you outnumbered the home fans, which is that's a added pressure to perform, and coming into that first season, which is a very tumultuous season for you, on loan, you kind of going up and down, having fantastic results like we heard, Eastbourne. You got
Eastbourne Borough.
Eastbourne Borough. Saying it's Eastbourne, against Eastbourne, and going, okay, you can do it. You can hammer these minnows, but it didn't quite pan out like that. There was some real dips in your form and the team's form.
Yeah, and like I say, looking back, we had a lot to deal with that season. We had issues off the pitch. I think the chairman was sort of changing. We had sort of a lot of new players come in that we're trying to sort of bed in, but it was just, obviously for me personally, I was on loan, but I didn't know where my future laid. Like I say, it probably would have, it was sort of half indicated it wasn't going to be back at Shrewsbury. So from 1 minute being on loan to then, like, although I still had time on my contract, actually, it meant nothing almost, because I wasn't going to be going back there. So there was lots to sort of deal with. We had, like I say, players that had been transfer listed, which again at that level is extreme, really. You don't really see it anymore, players on the transfer market, like sometimes Premier League clubs, but at that level it wasn't something I was used to. So there was lots to deal with, and like I say, it just, the season was, we just struggled to get that momentum. We could get a result, we could sort of feel like we were turning a corner, and then all of a sudden a team would rock up at our place and like I say, just outwork us and just sort of enjoy being in those facilities, and like I say, making it incredibly difficult for us to put any sort of substantial run together and pick up a decent amount of points.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that bad run, which Statman Ted will fill us in on just how bad that was, which I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear about.
Great. Yeah.
I know, I'm not too eager, I promise.
But it ultimately cost Darren his job, and you're in a strange position. You're on loan. You feel like you've come to a club where you can prove yourself, that should be doing better than it is. You like the manager, and I know we've chatted before that you really got on with him, and the players sort of got on with him as well. But ultimately, the results on the pitch weren't reflecting that. We've heard it a million times in football, and it cost him his job. What was your feeling at that point? Going, okay, well, this has happened to me before, where I've gone to clubs, managers have gone, I was thought to be the answer to a particular team's problem. Are we going down this same road again?
Yeah, exactly. And I think for us, well, I speak on sort of my behalf. I felt like sort of part responsible. Like obviously we were all the reason that he had lost his job basically. So it was tough because like say everyone, I don't think anyone had a bad word to say about Darren. He was obviously so desperate to do well and travelling up from Birmingham and like up and back sort of daily to try and sort of turn it round. And I felt that like you say, results are sort of key. And I think the chairman had changed and Calvin had come in. And when you sort of look back and put it in that sort of, that was a huge turning point for the club. I know obviously ultimately it probably cost Darren his job and where they sort of saw the club going, but actually it was a massive point of actually this guy now he knew what he wanted, he knew exactly how he wanted to do things. And like I say, I look back and even now, like he's probably one of the best sort of chairmen I've had at any club and at any level. He did a great job at Oxford. Like I say, obviously changed the manager and made that decision, but we felt, like I say, we should be doing better. With the players we had, we felt that we had sort of let him down. So it was tough to sort of take that. But like you say, it did have that feeling of here we go again. But for this time, at least other times I was on contract. This time it was like I was on loan, so I didn't know whether this new guy was going to come in and say, look, you know what, go back to your parent club, or where that would leave me. So it was a funny sort of couple of weeks where I was sort of wasn't sure how it was going to go and where hadn't scored a huge amount of goals. So they could have been sort of well within their rights to say, look, we don't need you anymore. We don't need to sort of have that wage on our sort of budget. So off you go.
Yeah, well, the run was a particularly sort of sticky one up until that sort of November.
Well, you'd had games like you had the game that worked out at Eastbourne, you get the 2 goals, then you go 3 games without a goal, 2 goals away, then 5 games, no goals, 5 points out of 15. And it got to the point where away at Histon, you lose 5-2 and you got the worst away record in the league. Like you said there about how it was a real thing of teams coming to the Kassam and feeling like they had a point to prove. You were the guys with all the fancy stuff. You were the team to beat. And not only that, but then to have this poor away form. And I think there are 2 results that really stuck out for me looking back on it. Losing to bottom of the league, Lewes, and then to Torquay in the FA Cup when they're down to 10 men in the second half. I'm not trying to be seen with them, but it is the sort of thing you say, like feeling like you're letting Darren down. He himself came out and said the club's in a relegation battle. And for you talk about being sat in the pub, this conversation of you're coming in to bring us back into the Football League. Like the whole ground has changed. The whole landscape has changed completely.
Yeah, and like I say, we realised that. We were fully aware that we were, if it had carried on, obviously much longer, we would have been fully in a relegation battle. Like, and for what we had in the change room, I remember we'd have sort of conversations where we'd say to like Muzz or Billy or whatever, would say to like Darren, like leave the change room. We're gonna, and they would just take charge of it and be like, this isn't good enough, lads. Like we're letting ourselves down, we're letting the club down, we're letting the fans down, because that was, especially away from home, that was, like you say, a big deal. We'd go to like the Wokins and teams where I remember Woking away, like I think the season after, like the game had to be postponed for like 15, 20 minutes because we had that many fans trying to get into the ground, and it was just phenomenal. And that was the story of that season. We would take so many fans away from home that it felt like a home game. But then they were obviously well within their right. They were letting us know when we were letting them down that this isn't good enough. They're not going to accept that. And I think I always found, because of where they had been, and every time I was at the game or after the game, I'd speak to fans and they'd remind me of games that when we played Arsenal or when we played, like, so you were clear that they didn't want to be playing at this level. They didn't expect to be playing at this level. They want to get back to those sort of levels they had been, and they were sort of very keen to let you know that where they feel the club should be, and that you sort of take ownership of wearing the shirt, the badge, that you're part of that, and you're sort of hopefully the person to help sort of get them back to those levels.
So Darren leaves.
Yeah.
You're in limbo. The club is at the wrong end of the table. And a club legend comes in.
Yeah.
You're shaking your head.
I was going to say.
Of course, this is audio. James is already shaking his head before we've even said what's happened.
Is a picture. Jim Smith comes in for Was it 2 weeks, Statman Ted?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks. It's his third time managing the club as well. It'd been in 25 years before, 13 months before. So you've mentioned before that a few people in the dressing room would have already known him. So it's kind of a back and forth thing, just like that.
Well, it was my first experience of him, but like just
The Jim Smith experience. Is that what we're saying?
experience. But I think my face would have probably been a bit of a picture in front of Paul Merson, just sort of like. But this was equally as. This is Jim Smith. Like it's a big deal. This isn't just someone just promoted from the academy to be caretaker. This is like a Premier League manager. Had a fantastic career managing. So for us, it was like, okay, now what? Like, where does this leave us? And I remember just having, it was very brief with Jim. Like, he didn't say too much. Obviously, looking back, he obviously there's plenty he could have said.
Yeah.
But I think he'd come in with that remit to just be like, look, get them out, get them running around, get them to sort of somehow forget about the last few months and get them sort of reset, ready to kick on for this. I think he was always clear that he wasn't going to be staying on. He wasn't going to be sort of here to the end of the season. This was literally as short a period as it could be until we found someone, and he was going to go back to what he was doing. So I remember sort of one training, if anyone knows Milton, the training ground that Darren didn't tell me too much about Milton when I signed. But it's pretty bleak, cold, wet, obviously that sort of time of year. But I remember Jim just wearing sort of work trousers, pulling his socks up almost to the knee, putting some sort of football boots on and just strolling out with a ball under his arm, like literally 10 yellow bibs, 10 orange bibs. Just said, like, pick your own bib up. There was no, like, set teams and then he just dropped the ball and just booted it and he was like, go. Blew the whistle and that was it. It was a keep ball for maybe half an hour on an area that was probably the size of 4 football pitches, no cones, no goals. Literally just a keep ball for half an hour. Wow. So looking back, I think everybody didn't have a clue what was going on. Everyone was pretty blowing by the end of the half hour because there was just lads with booting balls 100 metres to try and hit teammates just to try and keep it and get it away from the other team. But I think it was a little bit of a punishment, like looking back and their way of saying, look, you're not doing the right things. You're losing games. Go and run for half an hour, but also you could just switch off and sort of forget about sort of the league and all the games and just get back to sort of having a bit of a laugh. And obviously it started to work out and we started to pick up results.
Well, yeah. I mean, sort of under Darren Patterson, 7 goals in 20 games, which is not really a bad return for a striker coming in. Things picked up under Jim Smith.
Well, you get your first away win in 3 months. You get your 9th goal of the season to go 1-0 up. You get an assist and a 3-1 win away from home, given what you said about going away, bringing all these fans and constantly just not getting the right result. It must have felt like you said it's completely different attitude, different atmosphere, like you turned a corner.
Yeah, I think, like, again, when you look back now, obviously we were under huge amounts of pressure. Obviously Darren was feeling that. The players then sort of picked up on that. We felt it. So it is one of those you do feel for Darren because he sort of lost his job, but he went on to manage somewhere else. And obviously for us, that probably gave us a little bit of like relief that he was not under that pressure. We were not under that pressure. So sometimes you do feel for the manager, but also you probably think it is the right thing at that time for everybody to just say, look, here we go, new manager, new start, I'll say the team didn't change, the players didn't change, which for fans I think is always a tough one because it's the same players, same formation, same football.
The same ones you're berating.
Same kit, but we go out
the week before, are just performing.
Yeah.
And it is a strange experience. I mean, just talking back to that, you said that the Jim Smith way, he knew he wasn't going to be there for very long. You felt, a bit bad for under the previous manager. You've got Jim Smith coming in, playing you to keep ball, and the results improve. Are you looking around the change room going, he's a genius? Or are you just going, actually, the pressure's off us a bit because, we've got a new manager in, we're just playing football. It's just football at the end of the day. And if we're good at it, we know we're good at it.
Yeah.
We'll prove that in future episodes because I think this one has been a bit damning.
Yeah.
But But you know, there's that kind of impetus to kind of push on. What's the changing room like when a new manager has come in and the results improve? Are you like, well, yeah, we knew it would?
I think we felt like it could, but then I think we were also nervous that Jim might stick around because his sessions were hard work. Like, they weren't particularly fun. And I was thinking, like...
But you were winning, James.
We were.
You were winning.
We were.
The results improved no end.
Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of obviously the sessions, but also a little bit of take a breather. Like, that period's gone. Like, the sort of pressures we were under, it's changed slightly. The dynamics changed. Some fans weren't sort of pro Darren. They were sort of a little bit negative, and so sometimes their attitudes and their sort of how they feel about the club changes because it's gone. It's a new person. Obviously, everybody loves Jim, so it improved that sort of side of it. But yeah, I think for us, we knew we could do more than we were achieving. Whether that not down to lack of effort or lack of ability, it was just down to, like, say, bad luck and injuries and say the upset off the pitch. It wasn't necessarily the sort of the player's ability that you could ever sort of doubt. It was just getting that freedom to play without the sort of doubt in that sort of 6 inches between your ears that stops you sometimes getting out what you want to do.
Well, you've had 2 managers already this season, and in the next episode, we'll be finding about the 3rd manager that you'll have in that season at Oxford United, with Chris Wilder coming in, which was a huge turning point in your career, in Oxford United's fortunes as well, on and off the pitch, and a real high point with some lows over the coming 6 months. But as I say, that will all be in episode 2 of the James Constable podcast. Of course, we have had...
James Constable.
Well remembered. We've had Rich Smith from Get Radio and...
Statman Ted.
Tune in next time. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share if you've enjoyed listening to us. We'll be back with episode 2 of the James Constable podcast. Big thank you to the Queen's Head in Ensham for housing us and making coffee in the background, which you probably heard on a few bits and bobs. Hey, it's live. What can you say? And also a big thank you to Get Radio as well for putting it all together.
You've been listening to the James Constable podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. We're going to have a new episode dropping every Tuesday. This has been powered by Get Radio, Oxfordshire's local radio station. Head to getradio.co.uk for more updates and details.